Jeremy, once again, it's time for us to be heading into the season finale at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta, the Motul Petit Le Mans. And absolutely wonderful to have you with us here. Obviously, you and I have been in some shape or form almost since the very inception of this great race, have been calling it. And can't think of anybody better to have with us here to sort of set the stage for what we're going to be seeing here. But I think maybe to set the stage, we need to dip back in time and sort of discuss how it came into being. I mean, it was basically, wasn't it, Dr. Don Panos who created it. It was his answer to the dilemmas that the world of sports car racing in the United States was facing, and trying to come up with that unique connection to the legendary 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Greg. And great to be with you again, by the way. It's been a little while, so good to be back and super to be on the show. Look, I mean, sports car racing has been through some ups and downs over the years, as have all sorts of racings. I mean, everything is cyclical, isn't it, in this business, as we both know very, very well indeed, for various reasons. And back in the late 90s, Don Panos had a vision for sports car racing, particularly in North America. He loved what he'd seen at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and he wanted to kind of create that in this country. And so, his first step to doing that was setting up a mini version of the Le Mans 24 Hours, and that's why it was called Petit Le Mans, Little Le Mans. And from little acorns, big trees do grow.
It debuted in '98, and it was the genesis, really, for what became the American Le Mans series, with the Petit Le Mans as its season-ending headliner, if you will. And in its original years, it wasn't 10 hours. It was 1,000 miles or 10 hours, whichever came first, which gave us some wildly, disparate race times and distances, and then rain and all that factored in. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, there's been a few different iterations over the years, that's for sure. But initially, you're right, it wasn't a round of the championship. It was just a standalone event. And the following year, 1999, was when the American Le Mans Series really kicked off properly. And as you say, initially, the Petit Le Mans, because Daytona, nor Sebring were part of the championship in those days. So that was the crown jewel in this championship. And it developed very quickly indeed. I think the LMS very quickly became successful. And it just grew. Manufacturers came involved. The whole event grew in stature. And from very, very early on, Petit Le Mans was something that drivers from around the world wanted to compete in.
From the late 90s, but through the early to mid 2000s, the American Le Mans Series was the premier sports car racing in the planet. I mean, at the time, there was nothing like it. And to have the Petit as that gem, as you said, it really quickly exploded into becoming one of the revered events on the international sports car endurance racing calendar.
Well, it did. As I say, particularly the early 2000s were pretty difficult times, I think, for sports car racing, certainly in this country, because the Grand Am Series came on board in 2001, and everything was kind of fractured. And for a while there were two competing major sports car series, as there had been through the 90s as well, with different owners and people coming in and going out, and it was just a kind of a messy time. But I think the American Le Mans Series kind of was a catalyst towards building a future. And again, Don Panos was very much the man who made everything happen. And ultimately, of course, in 2013, he brought everything together, brought Grand Am together as well, along with massive support, and maybe even the guiding light in some of the resurrection was Jim France, right, of the NASCAR Grand Am brand. So by then, Petit Le Mans had become a really big deal. It was very much one of the four major sports car races in the world. There was the Le Mans 24 Hours, the Daytona 24 Hours, and the 12 Hours of Sebring as well. So the Petit Le Mans was very much the fourth jewel in that crown, if you like.
And Don Panos' vision completely realized at that point the connection to Le Mans, the American Le Mans Series. He really had that, his whole concept for the fans was, his slogan and the like. One thing that has remained completely unchanged since that very first Petit Le Mans are the immense challenges involved in surviving the race, let alone winning it. that has remained unchanged, and a lot of it's due to the track itself. Short, wickedly quick, not a lot of long straights, not a lot of easy passing areas. It has always been an immense challenge.
Well, it certainly has. A Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, as it's known now, of course, is one of the great racetracks in the world. I mean, it's very different to the European tracks or the tracks that the World Endurance Car Championship Series races on for most of the season. It's old school, and you talk about Petit Le Mans and then the Le Mans 24 Hours. You know, they're both long distance races, but very, very different in character. Le Mans, it's all about straight line speeds. I mean, you know, the cars are doing, you know, well over 200 miles an hour on the Mulsanne straight, even though the straight is now divvied up into three different sections with two chicanes in the middle of it. There are high speeds at Road Atlanta, but the S's is it's like the Porsche curves on steroids, if you like. I mean, it's very, very tricky going down through that section of racetrack, it means as are the Porsche curves to Le Mans 24 Hours. Patience is a big key to getting success at Petit Le Mans, because if you try and push the limits or try to overtake somebody when you shouldn't do, going down through the S's, your race can come to an end in a pretty big hurry. And we've seen that so many times over the years. And passing traffic is one thing, but it's easy to make a mistake going down there, particularly if it's wet, of course, on your own. Ask Alan McNish, who did it on the out lap, on the formation lap one year, 10 years or so ago, and came back and won the race, incidentally. So, it's a real challenge for a racetrack. It's got everything. It's got tight corners, it's got long straights, it's got good passing zones. It really is a wonderful racetrack and a great way to finish off any season.
And because of those nuances, I think, you take a look at those four legendary races. Le Mans has just the blinding speeds, obviously, in that very long track. But it's the shortest amount of time in a 24-hour race racing at night, because it's usually in June, right? Daytona also speeds. It's got the challenges of the banking and all of that, and long runs at night. Sebring is, renowned even for just 12 hours. The bumps make it as physically grueling as a 24-hour race. But I don't think any of those other three even come close to comparing to the mental strain that the Petit Le Mans puts on the drivers at that track with those closing speeds and the like for 10 hours of racing.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the weather conditions can vary dramatically, even just during the 10 hours of racing in Georgia, particularly this time of year. Anything can and probably will happen, but those last 3 or 4 hours of darkness is where that really does sort out the men from the boys. And it's such a challenge. I mean, as you talked about the mental challenge there, and that's really, really important, because you have to be on top of your game physically and mentally throughout the race. One minor lapse of concentration, particularly going down through the S's, can end your race very, very quickly. In the same sort of ways as the Porsche curves have become over the years to Le Mans as well. But there's more of a chance to relax on the straightaways at the 24 Hours of Le Mans than there are at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. That is for sure.
Things can happen there that you just never know.
No, they can. You're absolutely right, and I think that's one of the great things about the IMSA series in general. You're never out of the fight. If you look at the World Endurance Championship, and compare that, for example, to the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, the rules are very, very different. In the World Endurance Championship, some people call it old school. It's just a race. They don't have full course cautions. They don't have wave arounds. They don't have pass bys, anything like that. It's just, if you pull out a lead, you're probably just going to extend that lead during the course of the race. What I love, and what 99% of the drivers absolutely adore about the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, is the fact that with the propensity of full course cautions, it closes up the packet and the race starts again. And for the fans, hey, that's what it's all about. Why are we here? Why are we doing this racing business? We're here to entertain the fans primarily. The manufacturers are there to sell cars, obviously. A lot of the sponsors are there to sell their goods. But in order to do so, you have to have fans either coming through the door and or watching on the streaming or the television or whatever it might be. And you want entertainment. And the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship provides entertainment in spades.
Oh, it delivers, no question. Well, let's zero in a little bit on that. Coming into this final round now, 5 different classes that will be running in that race. Only one of them has a lead where it's sizable to where the people that are leading coming in probably are going to win this, and that is in GTD Pro with the FAF Porsche pairing. But the other 4 classes, I mean, DPI, the top 5 are still in it, LMP2, the top 7, LMP3, the top 6, and in GTD, the top 9 are still in this championship, with some margins being down to, in DPI, it's 19 points, Jeremy, after a full season of racing between first and second. IMSA delivers. These are incredibly close races. What's unfolded during the course of the year that's allowed all this to remain this tight coming into the Petite?
Look, the technical team, particularly in DPI and in the GTD, we just got 2 classes of well, we've got the prototypes and the GT cars. This year, there's no GTLM, so there's GTD Pro and GTD non-pro, but they're all running the same cars. And the IMSA technical team has just done a fantastic job, I believe, in making sure there is parity among all the different manufacturers. We have 9 different manufacturers in the GT ranks, and on any given day, any one of them can win. I think all of them have had at least a podium finish or a pole or a win or multiple wins. So it's absolutely wide open. And you look at the prototype, the DPIs. Yeah, what a class that has been over the years, and this is going to be the finale for DPI, which is a great shame in some ways. But what a year it's been! Yes, unfortunately, Mazda pulled out at the end of last season. That was disappointing, no doubt about it. But what a battle it has been between Acura and Cadillac, and for most of the season, there's been absolutely nothing to choose between them. With the win last time out, one of the manufacturers has a slight edge, but it could very well end up with those 2 manufacturers tied on points and having to share the championship at the end of the end.
Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights on this amazing season thus far, and on the history of Petite Le Mans and what we can expect when this 2022 version unfolds. Thanks so much for joining us.
My great pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.